Welcome in. Let's get it right into it. We got a big one today. We got to get through mental fitness in esports. I'm going to be making the case for it, the necessity of it, and the deliverables of it. And then I think this goes a long way to facilitate this conversation about what the hell is mental fitness. We've spent a large, considerable amount of our time as a business in the last year really just working on definitions and explaining and communicating to people. And obviously, we've learned what is a good way, what's a good method to describe mental fitness and what's not such a great way, right? So obviously today, this is something that's super important to me. I'm very, very excited about it just because I think it is a largely unaddressed area. And I'm happy. And again, don't get it twisted. It's not because we have a service and a business interest in this. This entire content piece, this video, this audio, however you are partaking in listening to it, it's 100% free. And the goal there is to deliver information for free to either educate or to help, to provide practical sense and advice and tips, you name it. But it's not to monetize this. I was on Twitter the other day actually discussing another interesting topic, which we need to definitely do on this, which is a player salary in esports, okay? Player salary. And it was a great conversation, multiple threads, and the way Twitter works, obviously you can get into conversations with multiple people, which is why I like it. And somebody had essentially retweeted something I said and was like, this is the dumbest tweet of all time. And I mean, look, if you spend any time in esports, you understand how this works. There's actually a term, that's kind of risen up through the esport culture. And it's called, and the word's toxic, toxic behavior, toxic person. Essentially, it's just a term given to people that are extremely negative, that have nothing good to say. You may categorize their comments by the words insults. Even you would put racism and sexism and all that kind of stuff into this box of toxic in terms of the esports realm and industry. So, I guess you could classify it as that. It's a dumb tweet. Okay, so you got to understand the way that we operate with mental fitness. Mental fitness is very much like what school should be, okay, for the mental faculties. We want to get to the point where we are influencing and helping change people's mindset and mentality about the world, and a great way to do that is through conversation. So, it's very rare that actually it'll hardly ever occur where I will respond in kind with the same vitriol when somebody presents it, because this is not productive. I could sit there and say, oh, you're an idiot for tweeting this. I mean, it doesn't do anything. So I had responded to this tweet about, with a question. And that's usually the best way to handle insults or toxic comments or behavior that is overall, offensive or detrimental to like your state of being at the time, right? And so I just responded with, well, if it's such a dumb tweet, then you should have no problem, easily explaining to me why it's so dumb. And the person commented and said, well, unless you're going to pay me $500, I'm not going to talk about it because my time is valuable. Now that response I thought was very interesting. First of all, outside of the obvious that it's an immature, childish, and like that's something that an intellectual lightweight, that's the type of comment that they would make. Somebody that doesn't really know what the hell they're talking about to try to squeeze out of a question, they're going to give you an answer like that, which is essentially deflection, right? $500. Well, I thought that was interesting. And I continued with that person and I essentially said, well, look, I'll tell you what, if I crowdfund for you $500, if we get it for you, will you come on the podcast? To which they again said something like, again, a dismissive comment like, well, cash up front, then we can talk about it, sort of a thing. And, so once I had identified this person wasn't serious about actually engaging in a discussion, I thought it was a good example. So I started thinking, and a lot of people behave this way, where this individual thinks that by preserving their knowledge to themselves until you pay them money, they think that that's a good way to conduct business. They think knowledge and information and withholding it, withdrawing it from others is a good way to earn business and or be a valuable part of a business system, which is absolutely laughable. The truth is quite far from that. In the year 2019, This is a good tip, takeaway tip, right off the get-go from today's episode. If you are selling information, and I'm not talking about expertise with hands-on consulting. I'm not talking necessarily about that, but I'm more geared at the people that have a 21-page ebook that tries to upsell somebody to a 300-page print book, that wants to sell a 70-day program. Like I'm talking about to those people. If you're looking at information alone as a pathway to be productive and to be a valuable member of a business or the economy of the United States of America, I think you're misunderstanding the economics of the internet, what the internet does. The internet has made information completely available on multiple platforms. I could go onto YouTube and get what I would say a bachelor's degree equivalent in information on practically any topic. Does that mean it's the same or just as good as? Maybe, maybe not. But the days of people having opinions and wanting to charge money for them to the tune of $500 is not viable. So the point of today's podcast is not only are we going to talk about mental fitness, I'm going to show and explain exactly how we help, exactly what we do. Okay? It's because I'm not charging money for this ever. I'm never going to charge you to learn about what we do and how we do it. Okay? If somebody buys our services, it's because they want it, and then we implement it. The implementation of a system or the implementation of information is what you should charge for. It's the same thing for our physical fitness. I tell people all day, every day on Instagram and Facebook what to do to be successful. I give you the goods. It's the exact things that I tell our actual clients that are paying us money. The difference is when someone pays me the money, I don't then give them the secrets. I give the secrets away, but then when someone pays us, we work through the nuts and bolts, the actual micro details of how to actually implement and accomplish that piece of information. So I hope that makes sense. So yeah, today absolutely this isn't going to be some hanky-panky video or audio where you're going to get 62% of our program, and then I tell everybody at the end, okay, for 3 easy payments of $149.99, you can buy the rest of it. Like that ain't the way it rolls. So I'm very excited about this. So thank you for joining. This is an important topic, mental fitness and esports. So I'm going to start with a question. Okay, I'm going to start with a question, and then we'll loop back and define some of these terms, okay, that are important to mental fitness. But to start off, the question becomes, how much control do you have over the outcomes of competition? Okay, now that applies to whoever you are. You could be a high school football player, a professional basketball player, an esports athlete. You could be an entrepreneur who's in the competition of business. Anybody that's in any form of any competition at any level, chess player, I don't care. How much control do you have over the outcome of that competition? And I want you to think about that for a half second. So if you have to pause the video, do it. This is very, very important because already starts the mental fitness component. This is where your brain starts to work. Okay, we need it to work. This isn't something where I just say stuff and you just believe me. I want you to get this. Okay, how much control do you have over the outcomes of competition? Now, before I answer that, because I'm going to answer it next with our opinion, I want to first give you the backstory of defining mental fitness, because this is important moving forward to get to the rest of this. So mental fitness was a term that I had heard practically nowhere, okay? And so last year at this time, February 2018, I was lucky enough to be able to contact Rob at the Pittsburgh Knights, Leonix at the Pittsburgh Knights. I got in contact with him. I went in to their offices at the time and pitched them on this idea of mental fitness. And to be quite honest with you, I've told this story before, and I love telling it, but I had kind of made it up on the fly. I completely pulled a Bill Gates when I went to pitch it. I had worked with myself on this concept for like 4 or 5 months before meeting Rob, but I never systemized it. I didn't create nothing. It was kind of just a cobweb, a spider web of ideas that were really good ideas, but I hadn't figured out the right way to work it in. And then so I was following esports about the same time. So for 4 or 5 months of watching esports and the athletes and how they interact on Twitter and learning the economics of the business side of it, and then watching the competitions with how high pressure and how high, like, the prize pools can get as large as they do. I figured esports was a good first step for mental fitness. Mental fitness is not just for esports. So that's kind of the disclaimer right from the get-go. This is not an esports specific idea, concept, or service. It's not that. Okay, I had figured esports is a great place to start with this, but mental fitness is a lot larger than this. So to predate the esports involvement, okay, what did I create this for? What was the purpose? I had figured in life, there's happiness is a worthwhile pursuit. I think there's some others out there that try to steer you away from happiness and look for things like contentment and fulfillment, and that's good. But I don't think happiness is a bad thing to shoot for. I don't. And so when you look at happiness, it's kind of a result of really just your expectations, intersecting with reality, and are you meeting the expectations that you set out for yourself? So if you had talked yourself up to be a franchise quarterback for football, and you're not drafted in the NFL draft at all, that's going to create unhappiness because it's not meeting your expectation of what you think for yourself. You think you're like a world-class quarterback, and there's ways to handle it, but that's generally the way it goes, right? So the mental fitness is a way to alter and change your mindset and mentality of the world and the way you view things in order to produce better outcomes for yourself. That's really it. So I thought esports was a good start because there seems to be a large need for it there specifically, okay? Mental fitness, to give you an idea of why I decided to say mental fitness specifically, and why I'm very particular about that language as opposed to just hopping on and saying, well, let's talk psychology, or let's talk sports psychology, or let's talk mental health. Why am I saying mental fitness? First of all, psychology is its own industry. That would be like, a taxi cab driver, a chef, a doctor, a personal trainer, a grocery clerk. Like, that's a job title, psychologist, right? The industry psychology has morphed over hundreds of years. And so now you have things like the American Psychological Association, who's a group of psychologists that are putting themselves out there as the foremost experts, and they're creating standards and guidelines, and everybody that wants to be a psychologist, you got to do what we say, and there's a whole kind of like hierarchy structure around that. And so the government's become involved, and if you want to become a psychologist, you got to essentially pass certain tests, and it's a defined scope. Okay, psychology is not anything with mental faculties. Okay, psychology does not get to have a monopoly on all of our mental faculties, meaning there are plenty of services out there that can address mental needs that aren't psychology. And I think we've kind of got to the point where that's become synonymous in our culture, which we just think psychology equals mental health, or psychology equals mental well-being, or psychology equals mental faculties in general. And that's just not the case. That's my point number one I want to make. Psychology is very specific about how they want to tackle any sort of mental needs that they think they can provide, and they provide services to do that. Well, guess what? Everybody else or anybody else can provide services as well, but you can't call yourself a psychologist. Does that make sense? And it's not a cheap way to skirt the system. Like, I want to be very clear, and we'll get to it. We are not sports psychologists. I don't want to be a sports psychologist or any psychologist, and we're not pretending to be them. Like, how would you define an NFL football coach? Okay, that's a good example. An NFL football coach, in my opinion, provides services to the mental needs of the people he serves, but he's not a psychologist. Okay, so if you've ever coached sports before, being a coach, a lot of there is a mental component to the game or competition in which you are coaching them. That does not mean that every coach in America has to get a psychology degree and go through the American Psychological Association. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's similar to what I'm putting forward as mental fitness. This is just a business. These are our thoughts. If you want to think of us as a consulting agency, go for it. That helps. A consultant. But we aren't psychology. We ain't pretend to be. So that's how I define mental fitness to this point, because no one was really using it. So I'm trying to brand it a certain way. And essentially, we want to make sure mental fitness is a proactive service for mindset mentality that can actually produce positive outcomes. It's a very proactive service. This is not a service that you go to when you're already broken, okay? Psychology has gotten themselves branded that way. Mental health, because it's synonymous with psychology, has become branded as something for broken people or only if you're depressed. That's an error. That is 100% an error. And so that's why I'm stepping up and I'm saying, look, there's this whole middle ground between psychology and everybody else. It's not organized. We can systemize mindset. We can systemize teamwork. We can systemize confidence. We can systemize life choices and essentially create a platform where we're actually able to deliver a very valuable service to address these needs without scratching our chin, sitting in an office with one of those couch recliners where you're staring at the roof and, oh my God, yes, tell me more. Tell me about how upset you are. Oh, yes. Like, we're not going to do any of that. All right? That felt good. Now, remember the question. Okay? How much control do you have? How much control do you have over the outcomes of competition? Our answer is, and this is the key word in here, the answer is potentially all of it. You have all the control. Potentially. Okay? Potentially. What if we told you that in order to have control over the outcomes of competition, you first, as a foundational principle, have got to be in control of yourself? What if we said that? Does that sound something agreeable to you or disagreeable? In order to control outcomes of competition, you must first control yourself. Because that's our philosophy. Okay? Rams of Mental Fitness, we've created a philosophy and methodology, and it's based off of 10 virtues and adherence to them. And adherence to the 10 virtues is going to result in control over self, a desirable character, and a system by which good decisions can be made. So we have a curriculum. We've talked about it. It's on the Health Force podcast. Google it or go on iTunes or Stitcher and find it. We gave it away in the episode Mental Fitness Curriculum. Go watch or listen to it. But we've got those 10 virtues. Okay? What we are hypothesizing, and actually it's almost at this point, we're kind of getting past the hypothesis part to a certain extent. We're starting to really proof of concept it. But what we're saying is if you take these 10 virtues and principles and you find a way to incorporate them into your character, okay? When you think about character, that's another term we got to define. Probably it makes sense to everybody, but for us, character is a system of virtues and principles, and it's the essence of what's important to you and how you behave. That's the way I would describe it. It's the essence of who you are and how you behave. And so when you go through life and you encounter different scenarios, whether that's a car accident or a business decision or what school to go to or anything from a choice to a conflict, when something happens in life, you resort to this character to make a decision on what to do. And so what we're suggesting is we can influence this character to be a certain way. We can have this character be a quote-unquote good character. If we can get you to the point that you're a good character, what we are saying is that you will make good decisions in life, which should then result in good outcomes. So that's the gist, okay? That is the goods right there. That's the goods. I just gave away and told you the goods of how mental fitness is seeking to do business and actually inducing change. We want to get you into a system that creates and modifies your character to be a good one. And not that everybody's a bad character right now, but we can always get better. I think we'd agree with that. And then from there, when life gives us problems, we don't just panic and just decide what only our biology wants to do, but we also can then consider this character, what's important to us, what virtues are important to us. We have to act virtuous. So what are some examples? What are some examples of specifically in esports that we can kind of draw the connections to. All right. So again, just as a I guess a preface here, for those not familiar with esports, it's essentially professional video game players. They play video games, they sign contracts to teams, they make money, they travel all over the world, and they play in very tense and stressful environments. And it's just like pro sports or college sports. I mean, it really is. And that's what we've been doing for the last year, is really focused on mental fitness services in that arena. And we've been helping players and organizations alike kind of, get through this thing. And but I want to continue to make this presentation specific to esports. That's the whole point of this. And this is the case for it in esports. And again, just to give you some insight, okay, here's the reason why I'm doing it this way. I'm being completely transparent because I think it's the right thing to do. If I can make the case for mental fitness in esports, I can make the case for it in any industry. Okay? That's the gist of it. I've chosen to start with esports because I think it's very practical for esports and sports in general, but I want to start here because it's also a new and upcoming industry. So there's just a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of land to grab. Okay, it's like the Wild Wild West right now in esports, and I think that provides a platform for entrepreneurs to become successful easier and faster than going into the corporate world and trying to convince everybody that psychology is different from mental fitness. I think people would have essentially a heart attack at this point. So that's why we started here. So here are a couple examples from the esports realm to get you in the mindset of, okay, let's see what mental fitness can do. Here we go. Ready? Practical examples. First one. Let's say you're the owner of an esports organization, or you're a part of one, you're a manager or a social media member, whatever, but you're part of an esports organization. Okay? Your organization has signed a new Call of Duty team. Okay? So maybe you had one before, and it was an old one, or you never had one before, but you signed a new team, a completely new roster. It's a talented roster, but this roster is always underachieved at LAN events or qualifiers or whatever professional events there are for Call of Duty, right? And they've never won an event. They've never gotten first place at, in Pro League. They've never won. It's just been an underachieving team that's massively talented. Okay? That's example number one. Remember it, because we're not answering it yet. I want to create these three scenarios and then swing back to them. So don't forget, you sign a new roster, Call of Duty. They're really talented, and everybody knows it, but they massively underachieve. Second example. You already have a Call of Duty team, and your current IGL, which is an in-game leader or the person that's the shot caller, or, and again, guys, don't get hung up on the details of, well, Call of Duty doesn't necessarily have an IGL. Like, look, okay, just then apply it to any game that you want, okay? We're not going to argue stupid details. Think about this, okay? Ready? IGL is usually somebody on the team who's kind of the team captain. He makes more of the decisions about strategy and executes and leads the team. Just like on a football team, the quarterback, there should be. And by the way, this is a good opportunity. I actually think it's a mistake if your team does not have a form of an IGL. I understand that there's something called ego, and there's 5 people or 4 people that might not want to designate one person as the IGL. I understand that. That's still a problem. I mean, imagine going in a war and you send in a platoon and everybody's a leader, or everybody's equally leader. I really think it's a bad idea. And that was one of the first things that I tried to root out when we got into esports. We encountered a team that kind of had like a team shot calling system. And one of the first things I did was, over time, investigate to see how that was going. It wasn't going all that well. And to try to slowly change it to a system that was more of a singular voice. Somebody's got to make the decisions, even if they're wrong decisions. It's better than arguing about things nonstop in the middle of a contest. So we shifted that. And I think that was a really good shift. So regardless of how things have been traditionally done, you understand what I'm getting at. The IGL in the current roster has a known toxic attitude. He's real negative, pessimistic. He gets on others. He berates others. He's not a nice guy. Despite that attitude, he's a top 10 talent in the game. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows he's a top 10 talent in the game. Now, he himself is constantly putting down his teammates. He becomes pessimistic easily and often. And he has trouble motivating himself to practice and get better. That's situation number 2. Okay, number 3, last scenario. Situation number 3. Maybe your Call of Duty team, or your Overwatch team, or your PUBG team, or your whatever roster you want to think about. Maybe it's already great, Maybe it's already a really great roster. Maybe they've won a pro league. Maybe they've won a couple LAN events. They're already great by all measures. Nothing's wrong with them. Something you might hear. Oh, they might not need mental fitness. Well, I have a couple questions. How long would you expect this to last? The greatness part. How long do you honestly expect it to last? Esports is an up-and-coming industry. Everybody and their mama wants to be a professional video game player, including me, secretly. Not good enough, and I don't have the time, and it's not really my ambition at the end of the day to become a professional gamer, but it'd be pretty cool to be a professional video game player. So you're going to have essentially an endless amount of players that could play this game because it's not a physical game. And yes, some people might be more talented than others, but by being 5 foot, 125 pounds, you're almost automatically 0% chance to play in the NBA, right? But at least in video games, there isn't anything that automatically reduces somebody from playing and potentially competing. So it's a different beast. So you're going to have endless player pools. There's a lot of games out there. And so I'm asking is how long can you honestly expect one team to just stay on top and just be one of the best for forever? You know what I mean? Like how long could that honestly be? How easy is it, in your opinion, to form dynasties? Especially ones that stand the test of time. Look at the New England Patriots in the NFL. It's not easy. Not easy to do what they accomplished. It's very impressive. But it's not by accident. And the last question I have is, are dynasties formed from talent alone? Can you look at a roster or look at a team and look at their talent level and predict dynasty? Can you predict which teams stay on top the longest off of talent alone? So those are the three scenarios, 1, 2, and 3. Remember them. We're going to swing back to them. And I'm going to show you how mental fitness can impact those three different scenarios. And again, it's among many, but that's a really good starting point and three different examples. So if you or your teammates or your team or your organization, if they have a lack of control, a lack of development, and a lack of growth of one's mental fitness, that's going to result in underachievement in all three of those examples I just gave you. Let me say it again. It's very important. If you have a lack of control, a lack of development, and a lack of growth in the mental fitness of either the team or any individuals or the organization, that's going to result in underachievement for all three of those previous examples that we gave. All three teams, underachievement. Now, I don't know about you. Underachievement is an unacceptable outcome. That essentially says that you have the tools, you have the talent, you have the skill, and you finish short of that. That's what it means. And that is almost wholly unacceptable in a competitive environment. But I promise you, if there is no control of the team, there is no development, and that's a word that I kind of want to riff off real quick. My insights to this point about esports is that there is virtually no development systems for the players. So on this point, I know I'm pretty harsh on them on a lot of things because I think a lot of gamers can control their mindset. They just choose not to. They choose to complain or whine or act arrogantly, and that's something that they have complete control of. So I smack them all the time on that. But here's one thing. A system, these organizations or a team, when you sign, they should create a bubble for you to become more successful than you are on your own. When the opposite is true, when an organization makes it harder for you to become successful by nature of signing with them, and you'd be better off almost on your own, and the only reason you're doing it is to make money or salary, that is a problem. Fundamentally, that's broken. That structure is very, very broken. So I encourage you, if you're a member of an organization right now, if you do not have a way to develop your players, to coach them up, to have them grow, your teams are never going to be successful. You're going to underachieve ad nauseum. So you need to learn to create a player training and development system. Obviously, I think mental fitness needs to be addressed in that. But at the end of the day, some system's better than no system. And again, if we're gonna use that word underachievement, how much underachievement can esports organizations afford to have? Right? Like, we're already looking at a landscape where the economics are actually the point now. It's starting to become, to me, being a businessman first, then coming to esports, it's almost an absolute joke. I mean, I'm surprised how much people are investing because this thing is not thought out very well in terms of money, revenue, and profitability. I probably would not invest into an esports organization had I the capital. unless I had some form of control over the operations, because what I'm seeing is petrifying. I mean, I'm absolutely like frozen, because you usually have one of two extremes. You have teams that receive investment money and spend lavishly and wildly on things that don't matter and will never grow a business, aka overpaying player salaries, buying the nicest houses, spending money on food and dinner, and all, spending wildly on things that do not create a revenue stream. So I'm seeing a lot of that, which is a mistake. But I'm also seeing people that either have an investment and don't spend any money. They're running it like they're still poor, which is a massive mistake, because why ever get the investment in the first place? Just keep running a broke business like you were before. Keep spending pennies. Keep doing it. And they try to control everything and try to control time and management. And it's just, you have two currencies in life, time and money, and you got to find a healthy relationship. And people are screwing that up on this side. So you're having those two extremes, and that seems to be the commonplace. Well, the other thing about it is, it's almost like organizations are just licensing their name to teams. They're just saying, yeah, hey, we'll sign you, we'll pay you a salary and help you with travel costs, but like, hey, good luck, guys, good luck at the event. And it's like, well, why are they signing? What are you getting? Like, when you sign to the Pittsburgh Steelers or the New England Patriots as an NFL player, you're coming into their coaching philosophy and training systems. You learn their offense, you learn their defense, you're coached up to go out and execute. Well, in esports, that transition needs to happen. You can't just sign to an org. And again, this is probably on both sides. The players need to quit being so arrogant that you think you don't need any help. The adversity and resistance to having people coach you is a problem. I understand you might not want to be coached by somebody who is just maybe wasn't talented enough to play the game. And I understand that may have to change, that dynamic, because that's kind of what it is now. If somebody's not good enough to play a game, they just turn into coaches. And I can see why that's problematic. So I do have empathy for that position. But that doesn't mean that you should resist coaches across the whole thing. You don't just turn down random. Like, to have a coach, and a good coach, is very valuable. So the players need to learn to adjust to that, but the organizations also need to do a way better job of providing a training system. They're not. They're just kind of signing people and then like crossing their fingers hoping they're going to be successful. Or, like I said before, they're just like going to try to do everything and do it from scratch, and it's going to take forever. And by the time you get to the point, it's going to be months, or even, I think, it'll be years. And then all of a sudden you turn around, you're out of money. Like, so we have a big problem. And underachievement, how much can you afford? Can you really afford underachievement? The answer is a resounding no. If you sign a team and they underachieve, not only did you not create an environment for them to be successful and help them grow and develop to be better than they are talent-wise, but they failed to even meet just their talent level. That's a problem. And I promise you, if you do not control the teams and the players don't control themselves, and you do not develop the teams and the players don't develop themselves, and if you don't grow that team's mindset and the players don't grow their own mindset, you're going to underachieve. If we can agree on that principle alone, if that's the only thing you get out of this video or audio, is that. And if we can agree on that, then we're 95% of the way there to understanding what mental fitness does for players and teams. We're 95% of the way there. Because that's the scenario, and then the only thing left to talk about is what we're implementing and how we're doing it, or who should implement it. Does that make sense? But like the question of what's the purpose or what's the need, it's very clear. And I hope we can agree on that, because that's the biggest thing that's the biggest hurdle we have to overcome in today's presentation for us to get on the same page about this. Now, if we go back and remember what we were saying about character and how that creates a decision-making system in a person, the implementation of mental fitness and the practice of mental fitness and the practice of the adherence to the virtues that we're creating is going to develop what we're calling a good character. Okay? A good character. We're just being simplistic about it. Good is a desirable character. So obviously not an undesirable character. Okay? Being very good obviously can be wide-ranging, but generally a character that you would want to have. Through the practice of mental fitness, we can create good characters. Good characters can consistently make good decisions. Okay? Can make good characters. Good characters can make good decisions. And furthermore, if you're making good decisions off of a good character, what we are saying is that is how you develop control over self. Because now you are not subject to emotional reactions, to outbursts, to anything that is not congruent with your character. And if the character is good, then therefore any of those outbursts or arrogance or insults or toxic behavior is in misalignment with your character. Therefore, you should not act it out. Now, important part. Well, Fran, isn't that going to take a long time to develop a character like that where you are not going to, where you can resist every emotional outburst? And the answer is yes. That's what the whole point of this is. This is a training system. This is a development. This is not just snap your fingers, read a book, and oh my God, I'm the best character ever. It takes time. Just like physical fitness, you don't just get a six-pack in 2 months, especially if you're overweight. It doesn't happen like that. You need to put in the time. Same thing with your mental faculties. You got to put time in. You've been living life for 18, 19 years a certain way. You're not going to just flip it around in 6 months. You got to take your time, but you got to train, you got to develop. That's not a reason to forego the training. Does that make sense? If the outcome is to have a good character and you look at it and say, well, that's going to take a long time, that is not a reason to not train. So again, good character, good decisions, control over self. Through our hypothesis of this whole thing and the proof of concept that we've done to date, and again, we've been working in esports for the last year, 12 months now we've been working. We believe that having professional gaming rosters, okay, if your rosters include individuals that have good characters first, forget about skill and talent. If your rosters are filled with individuals that have good characters, who then are going to make good decisions consistently, and who are in control of themselves, that provides the best path towards a championship trophy in esports. That's the best way to do it. That's the best way to do it. And again, if we agree on this, that is the 95% of what mental fitness is. The idea, the concept, you've got it. You've understood it. Then it becomes, well, what's the training system and who should implement it? That becomes the next question that remains after that. But it shouldn't, if you disagree with what we just read to you, and you think that signing a top talented roster made up of individuals who are shady characters or who aren't the best people, but they're just really good at the game, and if we get lucky, they might win. If you think that's the best way to go, just automatically sign top talent, then just keep overpaying. And that's what you're doing. You're overpaying for talent. You are overvaluing somebody's physical, talent on the game that masks and will overshadow their flaws as a character, which are preventing them from success because they don't have control over themselves, and you're paying them like they do. That's not good business. It's not good business. So now, if we go back, my dog's sitting here in the corner. Get out of here, dude. If we, hey you. Now, if we go back to our 3 examples previously, okay, and if we go back to that first team, the Call of Duty team, it's a brand new roster that your organization has signed, or you got some new teammates or whatever. It's a new roster. It's talented, but they've underachieved. They haven't won anything of consequence. They haven't won anything of note. They just fall short all the time. But they're really talented, and everybody knows it. Well, what if mental fitness helped find the missing piece? And the way I have the scenario playing out for this example is underachievement was normal because the team allowed it to become normal. Okay? Underachievement was normal for this team because the team allowed that to become normal. They allowed underachievement to become the norm. They decided, however, this time with this org and this roster would be different. This time's different. They changed how they practiced. They changed how they approached the competitive nature of the game. They held each other accountable to the new standard of how they were going to do business. Holding each other accountable to the new standard and a new way of doing it, that part is the important piece. Holding everybody accountable. Not allowing anybody to slip back to the old ways of underachievement. Once we've made the decision that we need to stop doing this, we need to do some behavior change. Here's the new way we're going to do it. Holding everybody accountable to this new way, that's our principle number 2, justice. Holding people accountable, justice. So through the teaching of our virtue, we were able to help a team and a coach create new strategies and hold everybody to like a new practice regimen or just a new way to think about it, change the mindset, and then not let anybody slip back to the old ways of underachievement. That is how you take the principle of justice through what we've taught, you're ingrained into it, and that is a step forward for this team. Okay? Second example. Remember, we have the toxic individual on the roster. And he's the leader of the team. Terrible attitude, has trouble motivating himself to practice, gets down on himself, very often and early, and wants to quit, rage quit, that kind of stuff, right? We take this example. Well, through tough discussions with this team and through the virtue of truth, which is our number one virtue, the most important thing is truth. Okay? Through that virtue, we stimulate a conversation around the team and their behaviors, and especially the IGL's behavior. It's an honest conversation, which I'll be honest with. This is funny. I'll be honest with you about the honest conversation. It's tough to have. It's awkward to have conflict and tension, but trust me, it's so much better when you do it versus suppressing the awkwardness or suppressing the tension. Bad idea, because that thing festers when you suppress it, and then it blows up. When you face it head on, you're able to create this environment where it's actually refreshing, and it's not as confrontational as you probably would think it would be. Anyways, because we're having the principle and the virtue of truth be at the forefront, the team and management essentially confront this IGL about his behavior. And they tell him, look, this is no good. This is not happening any longer. You are very, very talented, top 10 in the game, but this needs to be under control. If you don't control, this team's never going to go anywhere, and we're going to change this right now. Well, the IGL says, you know what, screw you, pals. Screw all of you. And he resisted that change. No way. No way am I going to do mental fitness. Am I going to study? Am I going to change the way I am? Screw off. Well, upon reflection and thinking about his reaction and utilizing the virtue temperance, which is again in our system, the virtue of temperance, management decided to release the IGL, release this player. He's no longer on the roster. Despite the talent he has, he's off the roster. For without discipline and control, without discipline and without control, the team could never control the outcomes of their competitive games. Flat out. That was the thing we talked about earlier in the slide. And again, if you agree on that, this is a perfect example for it. If the players cannot control themselves, they're never going to control the outcome. Therefore, this is stupid. This isn't going to work. This is never going to work for what we have, for our ambitions. And again, if your ambition is to win. If your ambition is to be a mediocre esports team, then okay, maybe you can deal with a guy like this. But I don't want to hear everybody talking big game. We want to be the best. We want to be the best. And then put up with individuals who don't have good character. The last example, which is that great team that's already great. Maybe they've won a couple championships or they've won a couple LAN events. They've won some money. They're great players. They're great attitudes. Let's say they're great. So dynasties, when you create a dynasty, it's about never losing focus, okay? Never becoming content, not becoming satisfied with where you are. Not losing the edge and, underestimating others and allow them to essentially outwork you and close the gap. So, we have a virtue. It's called humility. I'm sure we all know what that means, humility. And through that, if you internalize humility and actually become humble and actually do your diligence of eating humble pie every once in a while, right? Then no one, including the management or the team or the coaches, could place higher standards upon the team than the team themselves. Nobody. Fans. Nobody could sit there and say, you guys should be better. The team should always have the highest respect for themselves and create the highest standard. From there, if you understand what the standard becomes, then you have to roadmap the work that gets you to the standard. If you want to win year in, year out, if you want to win LAN event after LAN event, you don't just show up and hope it happens, right? There's usually a roadmap that requires practice, strategic analysis, mental fitness work, again, meditation, I don't care, multiple things, but there's work to be done. And if you can create standards that are high for yourself and actually stick to the roadmap that gets there, not just BS and, oh, yeah, and then just show up on game day. If you actually create that roadmap, that's how you create a lasting dynasty. Not getting content, not thinking you're the best, there's a great saying that's when you compete and you're playing an event, you should play like you're the best. But you should practice and prepare like you're second place. You should always play and have the confidence like you're first, but you need to prepare and practice like you're second. It's one of the best quotes I had. So that's essentially how mental fitness applies to a great team. So there's no scenario in which that I can possibly imagine that a team does not need mental fitness training. Now, that begs the next question. Well, what sort of system of mental fitness training is best, and who should teach it or who should implement it? That's a great question. And I want there to be multiple answers. This isn't something where I'm trying to like corner in so the only answer is us. Tricks on you guys. If there are other mental fitness practitioners out there that can systemize mindset mentality that can correlate to winning, that's a step. That's a positive step. That's what I want. That's what I want to foster. Now, these were just 3 examples, right? These are just 3 specific examples of what some teams may come across in esports. The virtues are tools, right? They're tools to be used. It's just like Batman. Batman's got his belt of utilities, and he decides when there's a scenario which one to use. Well, the virtues are the same way. When you find your character is built upon the virtues, among some other things, but essentially your character is built on the 10 virtues and other outside factors of what's important to you. And when you have that character, you can decide what part of the character to use for what scenario. Like if it's entirely possible that more than one principle or more than one virtue of our 10 could apply to a scenario, and you got to figure out which one to use. So we've structured it in a hierarchy where like 1's the most important, which is truth, and 10's the least important, but obviously still important. But like if principle number 3 and principle number 1 come into conflict, the idea would be that you should select virtue number 1 and apply that to the scenario. So like we have a common example of that we use for assessments, and it's you have a loved one that just randomly show up to your house on Wednesday night. You hear you hear sirens in the background, and the person comes in and they look distressed. They're all over the place, and they tell you, "I just robbed the bank for $100,000. Help hide me. The cops are on their way." Very tough because you love this person. It's a relative or it's a loved one, or like you can go very extreme and say it's your child or your husband, wife. Okay. What do? What's going to take the priority here when the cops show up? Are you going to display the virtue of truth and not lie to the cops about where this person is? And essentially, like, how are you going to navigate this scenario? Or are you going to lie and not go with virtue number 1? To not uphold truth, and when the cops come, lie for your loved one. That's some heavy shit. That's heavy. And if you don't have a system to make decisions, if this happens to you in real life, this is how people get in trouble. This is how you wake up in jail. Like, holy hell, like what the hell? Like, I got wrapped into this thing and this conspiracy. Like, this is what happens when you don't have a system by which you can make decisions and tools to be able to use. So these were just a couple examples, and it's just a showcase. It's a mere showcase. The situations in which mental fitness and the curriculum that we teach apply are boundless. There are endless examples of scenarios in which there's conflict or tension or stress that we can relieve through mental fitness. And it takes work and it takes training, and eventually you want the people to do it themselves. This isn't therapy, and this is the important part. This is where like psychology has screwed up, in my opinion, and why I decided that if I wanted to do something with mental fitness, why I just didn't partner with a psychologist. I could have done that. I could have partnered with a psychologist and created this company. I didn't do that because I think psychology largely is a bunch of wackadoos. There's a lot of problems with psychology. It's not this gold standard that it's out there ought to be. It's just that there's no real competition. So to be clear, we're not trying to be psychologists. In fact, we're going to be probably competing with them for business that has to deal with mental faculties, mental needs, mindset, mentality about life, how to deal with life. Like those, when you go back in the day, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, those guys didn't get a psychology degree. And guess what? They were some of the most influential people the world has ever seen. So I'm not going to get into this argument of authority where just because somebody is a psychiatrist and they're a doctor and they can prescribe medication, that automatically makes them somebody that's all knowing and all powerful for this industry. It's just not true. That's not the way the world works. A couple quick hitters for you guys. There's just some stats that I think further cement the idea that control is completely up to you. This is like when you're competing in an esports game, it's not just random. I know players love that, by the way. RNG. It's one of the most loser things I've ever heard. When you try to blame random chance as the deciding factors of why you lost, and you're telling me that you can't go back through your gameplay and review it and find mistakes that alter the outcome of the game, then you ain't trying hard enough and you're a loser. I better never hear you say, "Oh man, RNG." Can randomness and chance play a factor? Sure. But if you succumb to the idea that RNG is the god of the game and that's what decides what ultimately who wins and loses, then I'm sorry, but you're never going to control the outcomes of your competition because you're essentially saying you can't control yourself and control your own gameplay because the RNG is a greater factor. So I thoroughly reject that, and I've heard it too much. But here are some quick hitters of things that are in control and show how much is involved with esports and gaming. There's an estimated 400 movements on the mouse and keyboard per minute in a computer game. That's a shitload of movements. 400 per minute? Talk about a half-hour game, and look how many movements you're making. So you're telling me that with that many movements, that none of that can be analyzed and figured out to decide what's optimal and where you made a mistake. Okay, sure. Your heart rate can actually reach up to 160 to 180 beats per minute when playing games. On average, esport athletes spend about 5.5 hours per day training to play the game. 55.6% of esports athletes believe that physical training confers benefits to their performance. But again, that opens up the question is why then do a lot of them not do some form of physical training? And again, that kind of goes back to the question earlier about the organizations. What value are organizations providing? If you're not providing benefits to players, my argument becomes they shouldn't sign with you. It's not about the salary. Everybody's hung up on that. And I told you before in the beginning of the podcast, we'll do a separate thing on that. I think that needs to be a thing because there's a serious lack of business acumen in esports right now. But salary is not the reason you sign a contract with somebody. You should, as a player, you should look at who or what gives you the best chance to win. The prize pool is where the money is. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's $1 million leagues. That's the money. The money isn't going to come from your Peasley $2,000 a month salary that equates to $24,000 a year. If that's it, if that to you is that's the gold standard, that's the big thing, that's the big fish, go work at McDonald's and game on the side. Just do yourself a favor, seriously. $24,000 is peanuts. That is not the climax of gaming. You need to recognize that, and then just get in alignment with your goals. If your goal is not to win and to make money in the prize pools, and you're already discounting that, we're like, well, only one team wins that, so likely it's not us. So I need to make a salary. You're already going to lose. You're already going to lose. That's your attitude. But to this point, if 55.6% of esports athletes believe that physical fitness helps them in performance in the game, how can there be organizations that don't provide physical fitness? And I understand profit loss. I'm not dumb, and I understand expenses and how. But you got people that are spending money on dumb stuff, but they won't hire something smart like an online personal trainer for all their players, or to systemize exercise, systemize nutrition, have an in-house philosophy or a brand or a methodology, and run people through it. That's the biggest. This is probably the biggest business tip for esports organizations I have so far. And yes, I've never run an organization, but that doesn't automatically discount the opinion. You guys got to get that through your head. If you're an organization and you create some form of system, you can sign under the radar talent, okay? Save money on salary. Don't pay top people $3,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $1,000 a month. Sign them for less. Be really good at what you do. Take those players, run them through your system, train them up, grow them, develop them, help them strategize, create an environment for them to be successful, book their housing, give them a computer, give them a personal trainer, give them the food they need to eat, help them with analyzing data and statistics, and have them have a better chance of winning. Help them win. That is how you should secure talent, and that players is what you should look for. So when over half of you are doing these surveys and are saying like, yeah, I love physical fitness, it helps my performance, I think that needs to become a requirement. If you're going to sign somewhere, they should have physical fitness. And thankfully, a lot of them are adding that. But there are still some that don't. And I understand you're already losing money, but that's kind of right now part of the problem. If you like put into your budget that you're going to sign a player for, let's say, $2,000 a month, what's preventing you from budgeting in $1,300 a month for salary and try to sign somebody for that level, and then taking the $700 that you have earmarked for the rest of that salary and give to staff that work in training and development, or outsource to another company to do your training and development? Why would you not do that? In both scenarios, you're spending $2,000, but what it comes down to is scenario one, you spend $2,000 on the players and just do this and hope they win because you're not having any influence, you're not having control over them, and therefore you're not controlling your own teams. Or scenario two, you're paying $1,300 salary, but you're having them run through your system that either you've created or you're outsourcing to help get them be better. And now you've got player who's not training, players who are training, and yeah, it might start like this, but before you know it, players that are training are going to grow and develop, and the other ones are not. Lastly, it's known that esports athletes frequently experience symptoms of depression, anxiety, and difficulties with socialization. I think it's a little bit of a stereotype, but I added it in here because, again, there is some research to suggest that, especially the first two ones, that depression and anxiety are pretty big in gaming. It may be tied to some of the social stuff. You're interacting with a lot of people on Twitch and your stream, and people are watching these games and tournaments and leagues. There's a ton of people. A ton of people are getting at you on Twitter. Yeah, it's tough. And if you don't have control of your mental faculties to deal with that, that's going to create problems. We're wrapping this up. We're getting close to the end. If you believe that championships are not won from internal control, not won. If you believe championships are not won from internal control, environment, and providing necessary tools to athletes, I don't want you buying our services because we fundamentally disagree on how to create championship teams. I don't want to create the 9th best team. I don't want to help influence a team get 13th place. I'm interested in number 1. So if we can't agree on that up front, that controlling the team equals controlling the outcomes, then don't hire us because we will disagree entirely. The credential argument, I've hit on it all day. I'll summarize it here again. If we can agree on the concept of what mental fitness is, forget about psychology. Forget about authoritative figures telling you what to believe. Forget about it. Think for yourself. If you can agree with what's been discussed here and today, then the only question that is remaining isn't, well, does it work? Does it not? It should be, well, who should implement mental fitness? If mental fitness is a good concept, I like this idea, who should be the ones to teach it? That's the question. That's the question. Now, my answer to that, because somebody could certainly say, well, shouldn't psychologists teach that? They can certainly say that, but when you look at what psychologists are doing, their actions are not mapping that ambition at all. They seem to be content with having been branded, somewhere you go when you're sick, you're broken, or depressed. So that doesn't really have application to sports and competitive natures. And then, we've already handled it, but the American Psychological Association put out these guidelines for boys and men, I think in August, but it really hit like the media in January. And one of the things they said is that competitiveness is on the whole harmful. So if you're going to make that statement, how's a psychologist going to help you compete when competitiveness, they are saying, is on the whole harmful? Not partially harmful, on the whole. So again, who are the ones that implement it? My answer is it's not psychologists. If they don't believe in competitiveness, they shouldn't be the one implementing what I'm saying is mental fitness. They might have their own systems. Sports psychologists come up with their own little theories and their own little things, and that's fine. But if this mental fitness system, I'm making the case for this. I don't care what they do. I have no idea what they do, to be quite honest. I really don't care. I'm making the case for this system, right? So in our response to like credentials and you need a degree, you need a doctorate in psychology, here's what I'm saying to that. We feel that certifications are not necessary to implement this system that we've created. Okay? If I did, I would hire people that were credentialed and qualified to do it. If I felt that it needed some sort of professional certification. I don't. I do not believe that. In fact, I think the implementation of our system is going to require characteristics similar to those embodied by individuals such as Elon Musk, the Wright brothers, Socrates, Bill Belichick, and Ben Franklin. In other words, those people have no professional credentials around what they accomplished in life, yet they accomplished a hell of a lot. And a lot of those cases are very cutting edge stuff. I say we need people like that who I'm interested in their personal characters to teach others about characters. To me, that's the path of who I think should implement the system. What qualifications does Elon Musk have to launch a rocket into outer space? Before he launched his first one, what did he have? In fact, the astronauts killed him over it. They were like, why would you be doing this? We were really disappointed. There's a great interview of him on YouTube where he's almost like crying because he idolized these astronauts that went out into space. Elon loves space and space exploration. It's his passion. He loves it. And so when the astronauts, who are individuals that actually went out into space, came back and criticized him, it like tore him up. But again, they tore him up because he wasn't qualified. Look what he's doing. So you got to really think about this. We need to think about this completely differently. This isn't about letters after your name or how long you went to school. This is practicality. So lastly, the last part is, well, why our company? Why Rams and Mental Fitness? 3 parts. Number 1, we're a company with a system, curriculum, and possess the ability to scale this to any esports organization's size. We have this thing internally controlled. We vetted it out. We've changed things throughout the course of the year to get to where we've arrived, that we have an internal system of implementation. So again, I'm giving the information for free. It's now a matter of how are you going to implement it? And we have a system that we do it. And we're not just one individual who comes for like a boot camp for 2 weeks, right? Like, that is the tough thing about sports psychologists. Sports psychologists don't systemize things. So if you hire a sports psychologist to handle your mental fitness training, a lot of times you're signing one person. You get one person. They're going to be limited by time. They can't scale. They usually don't systemize things. So it ends up being just like sessions or like, let's meet. And I don't think psychologists are all that practical either. So they theorize and talk about things a lot, and they figure out why you're behaving a certain way, but then there's not like, hey, do this instead. Whereas with mental fitness, we have this system of character that we can then essentially get people to the point where we are making better decisions. And I think we can arrive at that point where we decide what decisions are good and what's bad. So that's the biggest part. I think the scalability and having a system and a company do it, not just one person that you like. I don't know what they're paid, but if you pay the hourly rate of a sports psychologist and you try to do that full time, like it's gonna be very, very expensive for one person for what you get. You're better off paying a company that you're gonna get 3 or 4 people working to do the same job scope, but obviously be way more effective. Second point is we want to be held accountable for results. I'm not looking to like run away or not be held accountable for delivering teams that win. Like, we've got data and things that are, and I'm going to get to it, that we can track and report systems, but like we don't want to work for a team and lose and then be like, well, that isn't our fault. Like, we want to win. And part of winning is also what happens when you lose. And so I'm not interested in like not being held accountable. I actually want to be. We want our results to speak for our system, not qualifications, not credentials. We want the system to actually speak for itself. Therefore, we have to be held accountable to the results that we produce. And everybody that we're bringing on here is competitive ourselves. We despise mediocrity, and it's not part of who we are. Lastly is it's a proactive system. This isn't something that you go see when you're broke. Like, when you and your spouse are having marriage issues, you go see a counselor or a therapist, right? Well, technically everybody says, well, your marriage is broken. Go see somebody. Or you're fighting too much. Go see somebody. It's always when it's way too late. It's a reactive. Our system is proactive. We want to work with teams before you explode and combust. We want to get you early and help you so that you never have to go through a trial of extreme tension or failure. We actually have a scorecard system. It's just like, when you collected cards as a kid, Magic cards, Pokemon cards, even baseball cards, you had like skill sets on there, and it would say like what their hit points were, how much their attack damage was, what their defense was. Well, we've created a system like that for every gamer that we interact with. So when we train somebody, we actually assess them and give them this essentially like a trading card. It's their trading card. It possesses their stats, their adherence to the 10 virtues and principles, their skill sets that are relatable to the esports and competitive natures, and we track all that and progression on everything. Or unfortunately, if somebody backtracks on there, we track it all. So we have a system by which we're recording metrics and data so that we can prove or disprove how we're doing. And that wraps it up. I mean, I want questions. You guys have them, put them in the comments below. Go to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram pages. Hit us up there. I'd like to think I made a really good case for mental fitness, especially in esports, and how it actually can generate results for people. Again, it's the Wild West right now, so it kind of just depends on what orgs. They got to get themselves situated here, but I think training and developing of players is something that's not done very well right now, and I think that needs to change. For everybody's sake. As an industry, we need to create ways to have players become better, and that's how you actually get them to be winners, is to bring them into your environment. That also is going to get players that want to stay and sign with you. Like, imagine if you're an organization that creates the reputation that you take care of your players, you run them through training system, you give them resources, you give them these assets all over the place to become better. Imagine if you're the org that gets that, whereas everybody else is doing the opposite. They're just like, yeah, we'll give you a salary in a gaming house. Great, bro. Well, what about my physical fitness? What about my mental fitness needs? I just play. So instead of me playing at home in my basement, I got to come to your gaming house and play in your basement. Well, that ain't all that fun. So that's kind of just our argument. I hope we made the case. And again, I look forward to feedback, positive or negative. I look to engage and create discussions. I'm not interested in fanboys or people that just want to regurgitate what I say. I'm interested in creating real critical thought around this issue. So thank you for tuning in and paying attention. Thank you very much.